Today we're going to look at the first of two blocks that we're going to be doing with our Coral Fern template, brand new template designed by Leonie West. It's an awesome design. As you can see, it's got a lot of very flowy, easy curves on the lines, easy to follow, and then leaves in it. And we're going to look at two different ways to utilize this template, and it might look a little different than what's on the front of the package. So let me introduce you to the Coral Fern template. The template has a pin you can use as to make the circular design, and we are going to be using the pin in both of our blocks. Okay, and here are the leaf cutouts that we're going to use. Really nice. You can just use this channel here and this channel here to put your needle and your thread through to place the templates onto your fabric. Scooch you up here a little bit now. And the other template that we're going to be using for our first block is our 4-inch arc. This was my nemesis when I first started ruler quilting, and now it's my favorite. So without further ado, let's take a look at where we're at. I have a 17-inch square piece of fabric. What I have done is I have my backing, I have my batting, and I am trying a new batting right now. It's called Birdie Bird Bird, and it's got an 80-20 cotton poly blend and a layer of flannel that is attached to it. And let's see if I get, there we go. It's actually sewn right to each other. Then I have my peekaboo fabric because I am going to template this. As you can see, I've got my template fuse, and then I've got my top fabric. Right now, I have placed my pin in the center of the 16 crosshairs. And we won't take the time to do that because we have all done that many times before. So just to give you some kind of an idea, this is very similar. This is what we're going to be making today. And I love the way it comes out. It's just a really, really beautiful spinning template. So let's get started. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to place my template in the pinhole. And I am going to be using this line. Let me make sure you can see that line good enough. I'm going to be using this line right here to line up with my crosshair marks on my fabric. So we'll just go ahead and start with the first one. Now, if you would like, what you can do is you can place a mark at 6 1/2 inches out from the center of your fabric to stop stitching. We're not going to be going all the way out to the very top of the template. If, however, you want something that's a little more organic, you don't have to make the mark there. Just stop when you feel like you're getting close to that point where you want the twig portion of it, I guess is what I'll call it, to end. So first thing I'm going to do is I am going to pull my bobbin thread to the top. And then I'm going to place my foot down. And I think what I'll do is I will go ahead and turn it to this direction so that you can see better. Again, what I am doing is I'm lining up this line with this crosshair. If we were to number these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all the way to 16, this is the number 1 line. And what we're going to do on the number 1 line, we're going to do on all of them. all of the odd number lines. So let me find my foot here. Somehow got knocked over. Okay, there we go. That's better. I've got my thread pulled up, and I'm ready to start. I do have staple tape on both sides of the template. Okay, we are back, and I have got a full bobbin now and hopefully ready to go. This has been a slow starter for me. I'm going to trim off a little bit of that extra thread there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the template back to the next line. I'm going to hold my threads while I get started. Stitch until we hit that template, and up we go. I am going to go again to somewhere near the arrow that I have on my template. It doesn't have to be perfect. And now we'll go back to the center, and I'm going to do this on all 16 rotations. And we'll do one more. Now when I get to this point, you can see, let me turn that off, you can see better. What you can see is my hands are getting away from where I'm stitching, and that means that every stitch I take away from my hands is one stitch of control I'm losing. So I'm going to go ahead and move my hands, and I'm going to stop when I hit the template. I'm going to come down, again making that rotation. I'm going to come up, and stop with my needle down so that I can move my hands and finish it up. It is a long template. It's beautiful though. I absolutely love this curve. Is so gentle and so easy to stitch. And this one, you see I went a little bit further. That's okay. I want this to be extremely organic. In other words, not everything really matchy-matchy. When you're out in nature and you start looking at trees and other things, what you see is that not every branch is exactly the same size. It's not pointed in the same exact direction. They all have their own mannerisms. And that's what the look that we're going for here. That's what made me think when I saw this template, I thought of a tree. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3 here. And I do have a new batting that I found that I'm trying out right now. It's called Birdie Bird. And what it is it is a batting that consists of an 80-20 cotton poly blend batting, and then it does have a layer of flannel attached to it. The purpose of that is so that you don't need to spray based or pin based or glue based or any other type of basting. It is it's made so that your fabric will stick to each side. And because I'm using the template method of quilting for this block, of course I have the top layer of fabric on with it backed with our template fuse. Love the template fuse. It's nice, it's light, it keeps a very beautiful drape on the fabric. And the one thing I always caution everyone when using it, actually when using any type of iron-on glue or base that you're going to do, make sure that it cools completely before removing the paper that's on the back of it. And again, don't forget, you cannot take the iron to it now until we are actually done with the project and we have cut our template pieces out of the design. So just a couple of things to be cognizant of. Has it happened to me that I've ironed it and forgotten and ironed it? Well, yeah, actually it has. And it's not real easy to correct that. So you might want to leave yourself a note, do not iron. I actually just literally unplug my iron. I turn it off all the way. That way if I go over there, I'm reminded I can't use it. So there we've got 2, 4, 5 lines in. I'm going to go ahead and do the others, and we will be back, and then I'm going to show you our step 2. Until then, let's quilt. Okay, I've got my foot height set. I have my pin coming up from the back to the front. I'm going to place my template on there. I am going to line up all of my lines with this particular one that comes right up through the center here. Where I'm going to start is I'm going to give myself a few stitches. Start right on my line. Well, maybe a stitch on the other side of it. Excuse my reach. And pull my bobbin thread up. Put my needle back down. Make sure my lines are lined up. You can see that I've got quite a bit of stable tape on this template. And you'll see why as we are using it, why the extra stable tape is going to come in handy. The other thing I want to make sure is that you have stable tape on both sides, because we are going to be flipping the template from one way to the other to make this particular design, and actually the next design we make also. So here I go. I'm going to take my first stitch in place. I think I have to find my foot pedal. There it is. It decided to take a walk without me. Okay, so then I'm going to come to the inside and make sure I'm staying lined up. And I'm just going to run along the side of this template. And what you're going to notice is that these little channels where we can put our needle and our thread through so that we can move the template without breaking thread will not interfere at all with the stitching that we are doing on the outside of the template. When you're doing your stitching, you really don't even realize they're there. Now I have a little blue arrow on mine. And the reason that I have that is to give me an idea of approximately where I want to stop my line and then start stitching back. I'm going to go back to the center. Remember, before you move your hands, make sure your needle is down in your fabric. There we go. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start moving my template. I could move it this way if I wanted to, or I could move it to the left. I personally prefer moving it to the left. I'm not really sure why. Maybe it's because it really does do a superb job of getting around this circle in the center. So we're going to go like that. And and I just ran out of bobbin thread. So I'm going to put you all on hold and I'll be right back. Okay, so what I've gotten done is I have gotten all 16 rotations of my block done. I'm going to back you up just a little bit here so you can see better. I'm going to take my template off. Well, I'm going to try and take it off. I need to turn it. There we go. I have not broken thread. With this particular design, we're going to be able to go all the way around without breaking thread. So we have stitched this with the template in this orientation on all 16 rotation lines. Now what we are going to do is we are going to flip and we are going to stitch it in 16 rotations facing the opposite direction. So let me show you what that's going to look like. What I have done here is I have kept my pin right exactly where it is. I've gone ahead and put my template on it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch back here. I again am using this line right here and lining it up with the line on my quilt. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we're going to put that down there. And I'm going to come over in this direction until I hit my template right in the corner there. Make sure I'm lined up right here. And here we go. Now, a couple of things that we want to remember. When we're using an outside template like this, you do not want your foot pushing against that template. You're just using the edge of your foot to ride alongside that template, but not to be putting any pressure on it. The other thing that I like to discuss, when we're using template quilting, I do make my stitches considerably shorter. Is it totally necessary? I don't think it is, but it's just me. I kind of do weird things, and that would be considered one of them. No, I really do want it to be sure that I'm not going to fray anything when I cut it out. And, my quilts are useful quilts. I don't make a whole lot that can't be utilitarian. So I want to make sure that I've got everything really well stitched down here before I make my cuts. So here's our second time around. And we are going to do this on all 16 rotations, just like we did in the opposite direction. Now, when you get to the top, these don't have to be exactly even. They don't have to be perfect. We want this to be organic. The next treatment that we're going to do with the edges of these lines that we are putting on right here, it won't matter if they're not lined up perfectly. So let's go ahead and I'll get one more done here, and then I won't bore you with watching me make, well, I've got 14 more lines. So let's do just one more and just double check and review. Again, here's our line coming right up here. And here is the line on my template lining up on that line. I am going to, when I stop, right here was my last rotation, and it comes and stops right in the corner. Now I'm going to just turn my template, or rotate my template. I'm going to now sew until the template stops me. And look at how beautiful this inner circle is. That is the one thing that really, really impressed me with this template, is how easily that circle stitched out beautifully. I didn't have to go over it a couple of times because I had, my threads were too far apart or anything like that. It just stitches out beautifully. So here we go. Again, remember, you're not pushing, you're not pulling, you're just guiding your fabric and you're letting your needle ride alongside of that template. We're not pushing the template. If we do, that's where we start running into problems. Okay, so we'll go back. And one of the biggest problems we're going to run into is when you travel back, you're not going to hit that line quite right. And is that the end of the world? No, it's not the end of the world. Like I said, we want this project to be very organic because it just reminds me of a tree and nature and being outside, which is so delightful when it's summer in the Upper Peninsula. During the winter, not so much maybe. As long as it's above zero, it's okay. But unfortunately, we have a lot of days that aren't that warm. So there is my fourth rotation here. And please choose a speed that you enjoy. It's a process to enjoy the journey that we are undertaking here. It's not a chore. It's a process, and the journey, I think, is as much fun as the outcome. Even when I take a trip, I think I enjoy the travel part of it just as much as I enjoy getting to my destination. So I'm going to go ahead and just continue to move my template back, stitch in that circle portion, and come out and do another branch. And I will meet you back here when I have
Speed on my foot, and I'm going to now. Normally, I would be doing a medium speed on my hand as well, but because we're going to be doing the template method, I want my stitches to be a little bit smaller. So I'm going to go a little slower with my hand. So remember, your hand is always going to guide. Your hand is always going to control your foot, I'm sorry, your stitches. I'm having a hard time talking today. I think it's the heat. I think it's finally gotten to me. It's been hot all over the country, and upstate New York is absolutely no exception. And I was out driving our bus today at work with no air conditioning, so I'm about ready for a nice cool house. All right, so there I have my little circle, and I'm going to lift this up, and I'm just going to move this over, because where we're going to go from here is we are going to see, now you can see this line right here, and I have my ruler stickers lined up to it. That line is going to be on my crosshair line. So I'm going to line that up for the first stitch. See how it lines up perfectly to the crosshair. And I'm going to go just take a few extra stitches going back so that I nestle right into the portion of the template. So this is straight. I'm going to come up to this very first niche, and your foot will fit in there perfectly. You'll feel it when it's in there correctly. I'm going to lift my presser foot and I'm going to move my template over. And then as I drop my template, again, it fits into that little niche absolutely perfect. Okay, that's a good angle to see. So then we're just going to go around, and remember I'm doing my foot at a medium speed, but I'm going kind of slow with my hands because I'm going to be using the templing method. So I want my stitches to be a little smaller, and you can see how beautiful the stitches are. That just takes a little practice. That's not a big deal. Once you get going, it just takes a little practice. So then I'm going to put my ruler back over, and this line is no longer going to match up with my crosshair, but that's okay because we're going to sew right up to this line. So let's go up here, and we're going to stop, and I can feel where it went right into that little niche, and I'm just moving this over, and then I'm going to drop it. Now my thread got caught there, so I just have to make sure my thread is looser. So now I'm going to do the second leaf, and we're just going to go around, and we're going to come back down, and see what a beautiful leaf that makes. We're going to lift the presser foot and we're going to move it out again until we're back to this little niche. Now, as you can see, I'm going to take this one step further and I'm going to add a third leaf up top. And that's the one that I think of as a flower once we get done with all the echoing. So that we're really not following anything. We're just going to the very end here. And again, it fits in, your ruler foot is going to fit in perfectly. Now I'm going to take this off and I'm going to flip it around and just lay it down. And you can bring it right back into that little niche. And
There
then
was
I'm
a
going to go.
question. Is there any way, Diane, you can pull the camera up just a little bit?
Yes.
It's just slightly out of focus. I don't know if it's because it's so close and the light's kind of glaring.
Is that any better? I know it's a new camera, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit better, actually.
Okay, let's try that, and if it's not, let me know. So then I'm going to come down, and there is my third leaf that was not originally on the template. So what I like to do at this point is I like to just cut my threads and move on to my next rotation. So we're going to do that. Now, when you're doing this, you can use even a bigger block, but I'm using a 21-inch block. So if I used a bigger block, I would be able to get a different look. But I decided to try this with a 21-inch block because I thought that most people would be able to get 2 blocks out of a 21-inch by, fabric is usually 42 inches. So you'd be able to get 2 blocks out of that. So here I'm going back to my center and it goes right into position. And I'm going to move this up. I'm going to hit my niche. I'll put the thread and cut that later. I like to bury threads, but for the sample purposes for this, I'm not burying them today because it takes too long for me. So we're not going to bury today, but normally I do like to bury my threads. So there's our first. And once you get used to using this template, you are going to just love it. I think it is by far one of my favorite templates. We're going to lift it, move it over, drop it, and then just do foot at a medium speed, hugging the ends of the template, and just moving it into place, lifting again, moving it out. And then we're going to put the third one up top. And we'll turn this sideways. And we're going to flip the template over. Put it back on your pin. It just nestles beautifully into this. And even though you don't have stable tape on both sides, I don't feel I need it. If you do, you can just add a couple more pieces of stable tape onto it. Okay, and there's our next one. We'll do one more just so you get the gist, and then we'll move on to doing echoing, which I think is so much fun. Stacy, you have put on such an amazing event today. Thank you so much, because I was catching a lot of it in between meetings, and I just thoroughly enjoyed everything. And all right, so we're going to do one more of these just so you can see again. I have the grid line marked with the stickers, and that is on my crosshair line. I went into the circle, and I'm just going to come up, and I'm going to stop at that little niche that you can feel. And then we're going to push that through. And even if you have to come up another stitch or two, that's absolutely fine as well. Then we're going to go around, medium speed, hug the edge of your template, slower speed on your top if you're going to be doing template. Come back out and drop your presser foot. Now we're going to go up to this little ledge. Come up here, up, over, drop. It becomes like a mantra after a while. It's great. And if you're matching your thread to your top fabric, if there's little inconsistencies, nobody's ever going to know it but you. So don't worry about it and don't stress about it. Have fun doing this. So now we come up for our third, which is going to turn out to be a flower. Keep your needle in the down position, turn over your template and put it back into the hole. And we'll just finish up that. And then I'm going to show you how we're going to add in all the other little lines. So we're just going to end this here. Oh, and my gear just tightened up. Hang on one sec. Okay. So I'm going to take this out, and I am going to get another sample. to show you how we're going to go further with this, I always like to think of what if. And I have to tell you, the thing that I tend to use the most is our design kits. And we have the Practically Imperfect, I think it's called, for the design kits. That is something that if you don't already have, you really want to get it because it will just take your designs to a whole new level. You can do everything on paper before you ever put your threads to your fabric. And if you use a lot of pretty fabrics, then you really want to design first because I know, and I don't know if anybody's like me, I'm sure you are all like me, but when I buy a really pretty fabric, I look at it and I think, oh, that's too pretty to use. So I don't want to make mistakes. So I would rather design everything right on my design guide. And they are so great. They have 25 pages to them. They come with stitching discs. They're just amazing. So that's something that I would definitely recommend you get. So we're going to take out one that is completely done with the 8 rotations. And we'll just back up the camera and put it up so you can see how pretty that is. I'm just going to turn off that glaring light. I've got to figure out how to disengage that when I'm sewing. So I'm just going to turn off my machine because I want to show you how you take this design to the next level. And how you do that is you use your 4-inch arc that is in your sampler set. That sampler set is probably one of the best finds that we have because it comes with 6 different templates. And there's a whole book out on all you can do with these 6 different templates. And we have a lot of classes, but you will get such a huge range of designs with this. And one of them is this 4-inch arc, which I absolutely love and I use it all the time. With the 4-inch arc, you have all of the lines that are 1/4 of an inch apart. You have a center line and then you have varying degrees. And I just have a couple pieces of stable tape on it to hold it. But I find that I always go to my 4-inch arc and I always go to my 12-inch arc, which here's the 12-inch arc. We'll put it down here so that you can really see it there. So I use my 12-inch arc a lot and I use my 4-inch arc a lot. And when I was playing around with the Coral Fern, I decided that I wanted to add some lines into just like an echo line. So I started playing around with that, and I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that we can do this. First thing I'm going to grab is my stitching line discs, which they come 8 to a pack. They're very economical. And sorry, I'm still getting used to the angles of this camera. So the stitching line disc, you get 8 to a pack, and they come in 4 different size holes so that you can use anything from a mechanical pencil up to a big marker. And you, as you can see, it's a 1/2 of an inch circle. So it mimics your ruler foot with your needle in the center position. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to draw right on my sample because I'm using a chalk mechanical pencil. So I can write right on this without it causing any permanent problems. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to start with the spacing gauge, or I'm sorry, the stitching line disc. I'm going to start with it well, I'm going to see, I like that first line, which is 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to line that up on the beautiful curve. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to line it up on my stitching line. And then I'm just going to draw around until I come back to my stitching line. And I'll do it a few times, that way you can see it. But this is mimicking my ruler foot. So we'll put that in. We'll just draw that around. And now you can see where I'm going to put in that arc. And then let's move up here. And I'm going to turn this around this time. And again, I'm going to use my first 1/4 inch line. And I'm just going to lay that down over my last leaf, because this is the one I want to look like it is a flower petal. So I'm going to take my spacing gauge, and I've got quite a few spacing gauges hanging up along with my necklaces that are fantastic for keeping things from getting lost. So I can take my spacing gauge off if I want, or if I want somebody, let somebody borrow it, or I can keep it right on my Sarah Diddy necklace. So I'm going to take the spacing gauge because I want this. I want to end my thread right here at this point. So in order for me to do that, we have to remember that our needle is in the center position. The edge of our foot is 1/4 of an inch away. This 1/4 of an inch is going to mimic that. So if I lay this down here and it's right there, then it is going to mimic where I want my foot to end. So we're going to take this and we're going to lay it down, and then I'm going to just test my foot with my spacing gauge, or I'm sorry, test my ruler with my spacing gauge and see how it fits right there perfectly. That's where I want the needle to be. So I can then lay this down if I want. I don't have to. I can just do this all freehand, but I just want to show you my method of what I do. So I'm just going to bring this around, lift up my finger, and just bring it around, and it's going to end right there. And it's going to look like, once we cut it out with the templing method, it's going to look like it's a flower that's budding. We can keep using this ruler. We're also going to use this ruler. I'm going to turn my machine on, and I'm going to show you how you can freehand it as well as drawing it in with your stitching line disc and a marker or a pencil. So I'm going to start down here, and I'll drop that as soon as my machine always takes a little bit to click on. All right, so I am going to drop the needle down, and I'm sorry for this being so glaringly bright. Stacy, how does that look? I think that looks a little better. So I'm going to drop my needle in right at my stitching line.
Yeah, I think that looks great.
Is that better? Okay. And then we're going to lower the presser foot. I'm going to needle up, and I'm going to, it pulled up my thread. I use, you can use stilettos or tweezers. I have really big fingers, so I find it's easiest to use something that I can easily pull up my threads with. So that's why you see me using those all the time. So I'm going to drop my needle back in there. Now remember, you always have to hold on to the beginning of your threads, because that is going to keep them from bunching underneath. So what I'm doing is here, I'm putting it on the 1/4 line, and I'm going to be sewing 1/4 of an inch away, But then I want to check because you see over here where this is going to end, always use your spacing gauge and check and make sure it's going to land where you want it to land. These spacing gauges are absolutely amazing and they're a big, huge help. Let me just adjust this so you can, there, now you can see that. See how I know exactly where I'm going to land, and that's where I want to be. So I'm going to hold my threads. Now you can also, hang on, sometimes I can't talk and chew gum at the same time. All right, so there it came right there. Now, what I can do too is I can just follow my line until I get to my next drawn line. That's all I did. And you're never going to notice it. You're going to notice it on this black, but you would never notice it otherwise when you're doing the template method. So you don't have to worry about it. But now that's just less threads that you have to cut into. So we've got that. Okay. And I'm going to take my spacing gauge again, and I'm just going to make sure that I am coming down exactly where I want to be. I'm telling you, the spacing gauge is the world's greatest thing since sliced bread. It just, even if you think you know your 1/4 of an inch seam perfectly, the spacing gauge just, I've been sewing for 35 years and the spacing gauge just makes it even better. So here I'm going to come up and it's going to land right at that tip just like I wanted it to. And there it is. So we're going to cut that. So now when we go to cut this away on our template, we have this beautiful curve here, and then we have this that is going to look like a flower. And that's going to be absolutely gorgeous. Now let's do one more, and we're not going to mark this one. We're just going to go for it.
So I'm going to show you on this piece just exactly how I template. You want to be extremely careful to only put your tear or your rip into the top fabric, not into your reveal fabric. The way I like to do that is very carefully putting my seam ripper in there, and I feel this. You will learn how to feel if you have 2 or just 1 layer of fabric in there. And then I go ahead and I pull that down. Let me do that again for you. Like I said, I like to feel it because after a while you'll get to know exactly what that's going to feel like. If you get to, go ahead, back off and go into another little space here. There we go. Now, have I ever gotten 2 layers in my template? Yes, I have actually. What I do, if that happens, I take a piece of my template fuse, I put it under the cut that was not supposed to be there, and then I tack that down with an iron. It works very well. So now I'm going to get what I call my little snips. My little snips are my favorite scissors for templating. And the sharper they are, the easier this job is. And I am to the point where I actually need another pair. So what I'm going to show you is when I'm doing this, I'm turning my block a lot. I like to hold on to the part that I've already trimmed off. I don't want to get too close to my thread. The reason being is even though we have that template fuse in there to hold it, if you get too close to that thread, you could end up with it pulling out, and you don't want to do that. Not only that, after seeing it done many different ways, I really actually like where it has that little bit of fabric before the stitching. It, to me, just finishes it off. It's kind of like a little breathing space between the stitching and the template, and it gives me a chance to stop and let my eyes go ahead and rest a bit before I get it onto that second fabric, which this particular fabric that I'm using in this project is high contrast, but it's not high design. It's plain. It's more of a plain fabric. It does have a little bit of a pattern to it, but not a lot. And the reason that I chose this is because I wanted it to give you a more modern vibe to it. And the more modern vibe is going to have less pattern. So this is how we're going to get our leaves. We're going to do the same exact thing on the flowers. And we're going to go ahead, we're going to template this all out. And then what we're going to do, I'm going to show you how we quilt as you go with this particular project. I've had questions. How do I place my strips? What size should they be? How do I put them together? Well, I'm going to hopefully answer all those questions and debunk a lot of myths. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish templating this last block here, and then we will come back and I will show you how I cut my strips, how I plan, and how I finish off the quilt as you go process. So until we get back to here and meet again, let's quilt.